The British High Street didn't die of old age. Here's who actually killed it. In 2008, a classified British government inquiry used a single, chilling word to describe what was happening to its local towns: detriment. Nobody murdered the British High Street in one night. There was no single headline, no single funeral. It died the way a body dies of 1,000 small failures rather than one. We've been told it was a natural evolution. That online shopping simply won. But that phrase did a lot of work it didn't deserve to do. Because the high street didn't just change. It was deliberately, predictably, and at every stage avoidably dismantled by a handful of national chains and political decisions that made the place where everybody knew your name mathematically impossible to survive. This is not a story about nostalgia. This is an autopsy. To understand the scale of the execution, you have to look at the numbers. Between 2013 and 2023, the United Kingdom lost more than 48,000 shops from its town centers. That is an average of roughly 13 closures every single day for a solid decade. In some northern English towns, vacancy rates now exceed 20%. 1 in every 5 shopfronts stands empty. Independent shops went from making up 2/3 of all British retail units in 1980, to under 1/3 today. Consumers didn't just wake up one morning and collectively decide to abandon their neighbors. Preferences don't shift that fast across an entire nation unless something upstream changed first. Something did. Before it was a place to spend money, the British High Street was a piece of social engineering. The butcher, the baker, the ironmonger, the post office, they were built to be compact. It evolved over centuries around a basic human fact: people on foot need their needs met close together. That evolution produced something modern developers have spent billions trying to recreate artificially: a place you went without needing a commercial reason, coming away with 3 conversations you didn't plan to have. The first blow landed in the 1980s, hidden inside dry planning policy documents. Local councils, pushed by national frameworks, began approving massive out-of-town retail parks on cheap land beside new ring roads. The logic sounded perfect: more jobs, more choice, more tax revenue. But local authorities ignored a fundamental rule of economics: retail spending is not infinite. Every pound spent at a new out-of-town superstore was a pound stolen directly from the high street trader 3 miles away. The boom wasn't additive, it was substitutive. Britain got the exact same retail, but relocated it to car-dependent concrete slabs. According to comprehensive inquiries by the UK Competition Commission, they bought the land specifically to keep it empty, preventing any rival supermarkets from setting up shop nearby. By locking small towns into a single corporate monopoly and using predatory pricing strategies, they systematically starved out the family butchers, bakers, and greengrocers. This wasn't the natural hand of the free market. It was a deliberate corporate siege to eliminate independent competition using capital reserves no family business could match. But losing the shops wasn't the real tragedy. The real loss was the unwritten social safety net the high street naturally created. The local butcher who immediately noticed if an elderly customer hadn't walked in for 2 weeks. The chemist who knew exactly which families had a newborn baby or a critical illness, quietly coordinating care with a GP down the road. None of this was in a corporate employee handbook. It existed purely because the architecture forced people to stand in proximity, look each other in the eye, and learn each other's names. A retail park or an Amazon distribution center cannot replicate this. It was never built to. To be absolutely clear, this isn't an argument that the past was flawless. The high streets of the 1970s often suffered from poor stock, limited choice, and high prices. But the out-of-town parks were just the anvil. The tax system became the hammer. In the UK, business rates are calculated based on the rental value of physical property. This made sense when everyone sold goods from physical storefronts. It makes zero sense in a digital world. Today, massive online giants place their warehouses on cheap, low-value land outside towns. Because of this, independent retail bodies found that online retailers pay business rates equivalent to just 1 to 2% of their sales. But that physical shop on your local historic high street? They are paying closer to 5 to 7% of their total turnover. This wasn't a masterfully planned corporate conspiracy. It was an archaic tax system that policymakers simply refused to fix, functioning as a massive, permanent subsidy for the destruction of physical communities. Everything we have covered so far is structural: planning, taxation, macroeconomics. But there is a human-scale villain sitting right at the center of this story. And it involves a highly calculated strategy that almost nobody talks about. If you live in Britain, you know the names of the giant supermarket chains. What you likely don't know is what they did with the land. Modern online shopping and out-of-town retail have provided immense value, lower prices, and life-changing accessibility for low-income families and those with limited mobility. The argument is narrower. The tragedy is that policymakers knew exactly what these corporate strategies and tax distortions were doing to the social fabric of our towns. They saw it in their own commissioned reports, and they actively chose to look away until it was largely irreversible. You've walked down a high street like this recently. You've seen the cheap vape shops where the historic family bakery used to sit. The endless charity shops. The yellowing "To Let" signs that have been taped to windows for years. What you feel walking down those streets isn't just nostalgia. It's a quiet morning for a place that was meticulously engineered over hundreds of years to connect you to a community without you even having to try. That architecture took centuries to build. It took less than 20 years to completely dismantle. You cannot save an entire high street by shopping there once. But you can make a conscious choice this week to buy something, anything, from one independent business that is still fighting to stay alive. The British High Street didn't die of natural causes. It was killed by specific, traceable decisions. Which means, in principle, it can only be rebuilt by different ones. If this video named something you felt but could never quite put into words, subscribe and share this video with someone who remembers. Echo of Yesterday has more histories to uncover.